Instead of checking what the president was saying, they were putting up, look, we've done a report on this very topic 6 months ago. Well, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to see the old report. I've already read that. I want to see if he's telling the truth right now today. I thought that's what real-time fact-checking would be. So let's give PolitiFact a break. It was their first time out doing this. I don't think they've done it since then. They probably will in the upcoming debates. However, I think it's gonna go. I know it's gonna go somewhere. There's a huge demand for people to know if they're being told the truth, because lying has become so forgettable in the minds of your average politician. Forget about it. I just told you that. I got a question for you guys about Barack Obama. Some of you like him, some of you don't. Most of my friends do not like him. I happen to like the guy, and if that turns you off, leave the fucking show. Let me ask, but he is just as guilty as other people of lying. Okay, now let me ask you this. What if you find out after his presidency that the thing about you can keep your health care, what if you find out, and I'm not saying the information's available yet, that's why I'm putting this in the future, that he was told by his top advisors who had huge track records of honorable behavior and telling the truth that people could keep their plans? What if he was told that, and he trusted these top 5 or 6 advisors, specialists in their fields, PhDs, MDs, and they're saying, yeah, of course, they can keep their plan if they want it. So what if he was told that the whole time? And his mistake was not contacting directly the insurance agencies and making sure this would be the case. Would you look upon that lie, which I'm reluctant to call it a lie at this point because I don't know if he knew. If he knew that you could not keep your current plan, then don't let him forget about it. Remind him every day about that lie that he told. I'm with you. I don't like liars. I don't like it when people lie. However, some people lie a lot more than others. So yes, is my bias outside of just the scope of delivering you accurate truth also at this time leaning toward a center-left view? Yes, it is. That's where I am. That's where my education experience have brought me. I believe in a strong America, a strong economic America, with people who care about their very old and very young and very sick, with laws that protect those people. I do not believe in wealth redistribution. Most of that's a myth, to say they're coming in, stealing your money because you worked hard and giving it to somebody that won't do anything. I also have a Republican friend who came up with a great idea. I'm sure other people have come up with this, but she came up with it in front of me, and I agree with her. If you're an able-bodied American who is collecting unemployment or something similar, able-bodied, I think each state, because unemployment is a state thing, should require you to show up to a labor pool office in your local town. And if the state needs work done that day, and you're able-bodied, you just can't find work, they should be able to draw on you to go help them do state projects. They're paying you anyway. Well, the taxpayers are, but it's the state that's writing the check, right? They're signing the John Hancock on the from line. So let's do that. Have able-bodied people be forced to show up or they'll be kicked off the program. Would that solve a lot of the problems with this myth that people are just trying to live off of your dime? You know, unemployment benefits are limited, right? They're limited to a certain time. When you get out of the military, when I got out, they had unemployment benefits for ex-military called UCX in Virginia, and it was 26 weeks maximum. And you're not getting another penny. It's done. So, most states have regulations on this stuff, but you're being presented with a myth by your right-wing conspiracy host that somebody right now is living off your dime and enjoying the high life, driving around the Lexus, eating the lobster every night. Bullshit. Show me where that's happening. Make them show you where that's happening. So does that bother me and affect me politically? Yes, it does. The people that I've come across that are very poor and are on programs are not happy people. But I'll be damned if I'm going to trust the American goodwill to take care of these people. The government needs to have the protections in place for these people. You need to know, American, that if you fall flat on your fucking face, the government will, at least for a short time, take care of you in a manner that will allow you to at least get food, water, and shelter. That's all. That's all they should offer, and that's all they do offer. Now, there are some states that pay higher unemployment than others. You take a look at like Pennsylvania compared to Virginia. It's a ridiculous amount of difference. I think I know back in the 90s, it was like $400 a month or something you could get for Virginia, and it was like $795 in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, you got to factor in cost of living allowance. You have to factor in separate state legislative moves. All of these things have to be put into a big stew, but you're still going to find some discrepancies in fairness if you're concerned about fairness. So that's my view. Am I biased? Yes, I am. But what I will not tolerate from anybody is an open and outright lie meant to deceive the people that will cost the people. Don't put up with it. Call them out right then to their face. I don't care who it is. It doesn't have to be a politician. Anybody. When I was a kid, we used to sing songs about Christopher Columbus. He was a great guy, wasn't he? Sailed the ocean blue. Without him, we wouldn't have discovered America. And now look what we know. For one thing, it wasn't him. He was probably the first from Spain, but we can't even prove that. And for another thing, he had such things done as cutting off the natives' hands if they didn't collect their daily quota of gold. Sound like a great guy to you? However, this is where we make our big mistake. We apply modern-day moral standards and laws to things that are hundreds or even thousands of years old sometimes. That is a huge mistake we have to get away from. We'll talk a little bit later about heroes and how we like to judge them with modern looks at their historical behaviors. And it's not right. It doesn't make sense. It's out of structure. It doesn't make sense. It's the wrong. It's like trying to watch a football game played in a baseball stadium with bases and everything. It's not apples and oranges, as Apocalypse said earlier, but apples and apples. It's more like apples and blimps. Very much difference there. So yeah, I am biased. We're all biased. The question is, what is your bias? What does it lean toward? Why does it lean that way? Justify your belief system. If you don't do it for me, do it in your own head. Justify it. Might be a hell of a challenge. Hi, Andrew. Misguided. Best term for Obama. Misguided. Okay. Andrew, Zodiac 12, my favorite Australian, is in the chat room. The picture of this episode is more about right brain, left brain, and you'll know why when you look at it if you understand right brain, left brain. These cognitive psychology theories are subject to change over the hundreds of years that they've been looked at. Mostly recently. I mean, psychology hasn't picked up as a worldwide science except for in the past 100 years to a fever pitch, to the point where you could actually do experiments that meant something. But before it was essentially a small toe on the leg of philosophy. Psychology was. Why are they acting like that? Well, it must come down to religion or philosophy. No, there can be more to it. And we're getting there. Misguided, says Andrew, about Barack Obama. Misguided. That would basically insinuate, Andrew, that his advisors were being given too much credibility by him. So if he was misguided, it was those advisors that are misdirecting him? Or is it misguided in the sense that he doesn't understand the world, or he has a very hyper-optimistic view of the world and is therefore not making decisions that mostly affect the reality? In a way that he could be if he were more honest with himself about what's going on in the world and not quite so optimistic. Maybe that's what you mean. You can explain that in the chat room. For the rest of you guys, we're going to start off with a very short clip here. Here's a guy. It's called The Psychology of Belief, Bias in the Brain. Short clip, 3 minutes. This guy nails it. In 3 minutes, this guy nails it. You're going to learn my whole outlook on this, that it just took me 20 minutes to scratch the surface of, in 3 minutes and 11 seconds. So let's get it.
The big question is, why do you believe certain things? Why do you believe in Allah versus Jesus? Or why do you believe in alternative medicine versus conventional medicine? And a lot of it has to do with what you're exposed to, as well as a number of biases that we as humans have that sort of colors the information we receive from the world. A large portion of its geography, right? So if you're born in Oklahoma, you're much more likely to become a Christian than you are a Hindu, simply because everyone else around you is a Christian. But in terms of the specifics of our beliefs, they're very, very highly driven by, what we're imprinted with early. So, those people that are around us, as well as the fact that we naturally, as humans, seem to have these pieces built into our brain that want us to believe things that are not necessarily backed up by the evidence. There's been some very, very interesting research over about the last 15 years or so that has cleverly shown that children, I'm talking here under 2 years old, seem to be naturally wired to believe in things that are not necessarily actually there. And that certainly helps contribute to our belief in supernatural things later in life. I think one of the things that you have to do if you're trying to help other people see that maybe what it is that they are thinking is not necessarily accurate is you don't go up to them and say, hey, you're wrong. That's the completely wrong thing to do, and we actually know that from research, is it's called psychological reactance. And I'll just say, hey, screw you, I'm double right now. So instead what you have to do is you have to help them understand, why is it that I believe these things, and why is it that you believe what you believe? I'm a huge fan of the scientific method. I think one of the best things that our culture has produced over the last 400 years is the scientific method. And the reason is because what the scientific method does is it takes all of these biases, all these heuristics that we're naturally prone to, and it helps to eliminate them. It helps to control for all the things that we as humans naturally do so that we don't fool ourselves. And that's the key to any sort of real understanding of things, is not just, oh, well, here's my evidence for it. It's, well, here's my unbiased evidence for it. For me personally, it's about seeing the world as it is, not as I want it to be. And I think the world would be a much better place if all of us were trained in how to think critically, in how to think rationally, in how to logically examine questions, and not just find what I want to believe, which is what we do naturally, but find what actually is, or what actually isn't, so that you do so in an unbiased way.
You're listening to Truth on Tap with host Kevin Kierstead.
You heard it. Now, I don't have the guy's name right now, but you can see in the playlist for this show that the title is listed, and all you got to do is Google that. It'll come up on YouTube. This guy, I know he's he's either a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They're not the same, by the way. And he seems to have his shit straight. And maybe there are a lot of people that also know what he knows, but nobody's saying it. And I don't know why that is, because it's true. You look at, when you go up and tell someone they're wrong, you've lost, because they're going to leave that conversation believing even more that they were right. Why? Because they don't like you. They don't like you. You challenged them. People's beliefs become part of their identity. When you challenge that belief, you're challenging their importance. You're challenging their really their existence. Because if someone has a bunch of beliefs that are wrong, and you can go through a list and show them, they become less relevant, don't they? They start to feel like they don't matter. They don't even have a grip on reality. So you can't just walk up to somebody and say they're wrong. First of all, who made you the authority? Like this guy, I was looking for a god of information processing, and what I found is the scientific method is the best thing we have going. What I also found is that the brightest minds we've managed to come up with on this fucking ball of shit that we live on for the past few thousand years seem to have had some important things to say, so I trust them. And they are not flawless. But they rose above for a reason. Things resonated. Things rang true. And what happens is the people whose little speeches and bigger books tend to last through the centuries are people who touched on some universal truths. And that's not easy to do. If it was easy to do, everybody'd be famous. So let's keep going now. I've got a couple other things I wanted to say about this, but and I've got a guy that I disagree with here. Now, what you just heard was a guy I agree with. This is called Cognitive Biases 101. I think we better, you know what, I got a treat for you at the end. It's going to be Deepak Chopra versus Michael Shermer. So you've got a spiritual guy who's at the PhD level fighting with a pure science guy that's at the PhD level. Good stuff there. I've heard their first one. I have not heard this one, so we'll be going into this together cold if you haven't heard it. But I'm trying to figure out which one I want to do first, because we've got this Let's do the crash course first of brain versus bias, and then we'll do Where is that other one? I know I had 4. So there's Cognitive Bias 101 with Peter Bauman or Bogan. I don't know how you pronounce that. The Psychology of Belief, Bias, and Brain we just did. All right, what we're going to do now is the crash course. I like this guy. I don't like that he tries to sound like Carl Sagan because, be original. But, the stuff that he brings on